Hey guys, welcome to New Beginnings Realty. My name is Ramon Angon and I'm your host, and this is
Farid Mohammed. Hello, guys.
Now we're here with Yorman Martinez from MexLaw to inform you on myths about real estate, what not to do, what to do, and keep you informed with real information that might affect your investment or purchase down here in Mexico. Thank you so much for having us. Now, would you tell us a little bit about who MexLaw is and what your service is?
Sure thing. First of all, thank you for having me, guys. Well, yeah, MexLaw is a law firm that tries to provide services for foreigners. Okay, we have Mexican law, but focused for foreigners. We have immigration, we have litigation, real estate. We have most of the services needed for any foreigner to have legal assistance in Mexico. We try to provide the best possible service. Okay, we try to meet international standards. So myself, I'm the immigration attorney at MexLaw. So if you were to want to apply for your residency, I would be Yorman.
Okay. All right,
awesome.
perfect.
Now, talking about residency, what are the fastest ways nowadays to get a residency, a permanent residence in Mexico?
Well, there's, let's say that the only way to obtain residency in Mexico is being approved by a Mexican consulate. Okay, so there's might be a misconception in which foreigners might think that doing the residency process is entirely within Mexico, but that's not the case. In order to be approved to obtain a residency, the foreigner has to apply for the residency at a Mexican consulate, which is outside of Mexico. It can be in any Mexican consulate throughout the world. We have quite a few throughout the world. But yes, the process starts there. At the Mexican consulate, the foreigner would be approved. Once approved, they will receive a visa, and then having a visa, they come to Mexico to convert that visa to a resident card. Okay.
Awesome. And how long does it normally take?
It might vary depending on the consulate. Basically, getting the appointment might take a little bit longer one place from another. However, the process itself is quite simple. I mean, if you're lucky enough to have a quick appointment, then basically you can have the whole process done within a month.
Oh, awesome.
Perfect. Now, one of our other questions from our viewers is, there's a big myth out there, right, regarding foreigners owning land on beachfront or borders. Can you expand a little on that subject, and where does that come from?
Okay. Well, that is true. A foreigner cannot own directly property within 50-kilometer radius from coastlines or 100-kilometer radius from borders. That is true. I mean, a foreigner cannot own it directly. However, there's a loophole in which Mexico allows the foreigner to acquire property through two Mexican entities, which is the bank trust, also known as the fideicomiso, and through a Mexican corporation opened or owned by a foreigner. Okay, so those are two ways to acquire property within those restricted zones.
Okay, and where does that come from?
Well, it has a bit of history. We well know that our Mexican territory used to be a lot bigger, right? However, since there wasn't a law that regulated territory, it was the thing is, one of our previous presidents sold out the property, so we used to be a lot bigger, but now we're half that size.
He's talking about you, California, and Mexico, Colorado.
Well, yeah, Mexico decided not to make the same mistake again, so they implemented this law that states that a foreigner cannot directly own property in Mexico, but can own it through other methods.
Okay, perfect. So
Now-
it's kind of a history lesson. Thank you so much. Okay.
Sure.
That's awesome. And also talking about the fideicomiso and getting a fideicomiso, and after that, person from U.S. taking a fideicomiso and buying a property over here, does it help to get the residence, the permanent residence, or?
Yes, I mean, a foreigner can acquire or be granted a residency if they already own property in Mexico. Okay, but the thing is, the property needs to meet a certain value in order to qualify to be approved for a residency. That minimum value currently is $545,000 US, or the equivalent to any other currency. Okay, if the property does not meet that value, unfortunately, the owner cannot acquire or apply for that residency. What can be done is owning multiple properties in Mexico, adding them up, and then meeting that requirement of the 545,000 US dollars. Okay. However, my personal advice would be maybe apply for a different type of visa, because there might be, I mean, I've had situations, I had it with a client in which he wanted to, I mean, his final goal was to obtain residency. He purchased the property, paid it, liquidated, and owned it. However, that property did not meet the value to acquire the residency.
The requirements.
So I might have advised to apply for a different type of visa. He wanted to apply for the financial solvency visa, but the thing was that he did not meet the requirement based on savings because he had purchased a property before. Okay, so he didn't meet the requirements for the minimum value of the property, and he didn't meet the requirements for financial solvency because he had used that towards the property. So
Okay.
to apply for a residency, you can only apply for one type of visa, not half of owning property and half in financial solvency. So, I mean, if you're going to buy a property, a foreigner wants to buy a property in Mexico, try to examine if the property will meet the value, or you rather apply for the residency first and then buy the property.
Okay. So just to get this correct, in order for any of our viewers to purchase a property and then acquire a residency, that property value has to be 545,000, correct?
Yes.
And this ties into our next question from our viewers, which is, how much money do I have to prove, not property value, me have perhaps in my account savings, as you said, to be able to apply for this residency? And also, I heard that the amount has been increased, the required amount. Is that true?
It is true that it's gone up, but actually, compared to last year, it didn't go up in comparison to other years.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. The thing is that the requirements for a foreigner to apply for a residency are directly tied to our minimum wage in Mexico. Okay, so if the minimum wage in Mexico goes up, then so will the requirements. The reason is that the requirements to apply for a residency are calculated based on how many minimum wages in Mexico would that equal. As an example, for a financial solvency visa, if you were to apply based on savings, the strict requirement would be to prove that you own at least the equivalent to 5,000 days of minimum wage in Mexico City. Now, if we do the math, it ends up to being equal to around 72,000 US dollars. So, answering your question, in order to apply for a temporary residency, a foreigner must have one of two: either having savings for a minimum of 72,000 US dollars, or a monthly income free of taxes of at least 4,100 US dollars.
Okay, either or.
Either or.
Perfect, thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. And also, what are the difference between a temporary residence and the permanent residence?
Well, as the name states, one is temporary. So, in other words, it's only granted for a period of time. While the permanent residency, I mean, if you apply for a permanent residency and are granted or approved for a permanent residency, you don't have to worry about renewing that residency once again. Now, the temporary residency, upon the first application, it will only be granted for 1 year, and that applies for anyone that wants to apply for a temporary residency. However, you have the option or the ability to renew or extend your residency for an additional years. I mean, you can renew it for 1, 2, or 3 more years. Now, Mexican law states that a foreigner that has been on a temporary residency can then after convert that temporary residency to a permanent residency regardless of not being retired yet.
Okay. After how long?
After 4 years.
4 years, perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, to apply for a permanent residency, basically the foreigner needs to prove that they have retired. Basically, the permanent residency, if applied at the Mexican consulate, will only be approved if the foreigner is willing and has the ability economically to move to Mexico permanently. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Now, we also had a question regarding tourist visa. Can I operate a rental business such as an Airbnb, if I only have a tourist visa?
Yes. The same. I mean, the same as applying for or purchasing property as a tourist. I mean, the tourist can purchase property through the fideicomiso or the Mexican corporation. So by the same means, a foreigner can operate that business or that rental even as a tourist. If you purchased it through a fideicomiso, then either you can use a property manager, which is the most common thing, to manage that property and just collect that income. Okay.
Correct.
If you own a Mexican corporation, it's a lot easier because the corporation does all the handling of the property. The property belongs to the corporation, so the corporation will operate it as a business. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
So if you already own a Mexican corporation, you don't need a residency. You can maintain yourself as a tourist and just collect that income and just deposit it in your foreign accounts.
Excellent, without having to live in Mexico at all.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. And also, you already touched one of the most common mistakes before, but what are the other of the most common mistakes for foreigners that want to buy property and legalize themselves in Mexico?
Well, maybe the foreigner will think that they can, buying the property in Mexico will automatically grant them residency. And I also have heard that foreigners think that owning property will automatically allow them to apply for permanent, which is not the case. A foreigner that has property can only apply for a temporary residency. Okay, unless of course if the tourist already applied for a permanent residency by retirement, then that's a whole different story. Okay.
Okay.
Now, common mistakes is maybe thinking that you'll be able to purchase a vehicle in Mexico, which is not the case. Tourists cannot own vehicles in Mexico.
Oh, wow.
Only tourists can. Only residents can purchase vehicles in Mexico.
Okay.
Okay. So we've had clients here in MexLaw that purchase their property, and then they say, okay, I need to buy a vehicle, but the dealership says it's asking me for a residency, which I don't have. So that's because a foreigner cannot purchase a vehicle and register it and plate it in Mexico without a residency. Okay, to register a vehicle in Mexico, they'll ask you for a corp number, which is
Okay.
our registration number.
Yeah.
A foreigner or a tourist does not have that
Gotcha.
unless they apply for a residency.
So would that apply also for a temporary residence? Would they get a CURP as well? Or
Yes.
it's only permanent? Oh, okay, perfect.
Yes, temporary and permanent obtain their corp upon the application of the resident cards.
Okay. Good. For those of you that don't know, it's kind of like your social security number here
Yeah.
in Mexico, right? Now, this ties us into our next question. Now, what happens if I'm a foreigner? Let's say my mother purchased a property in Mexico, correct? And I don't have any status or whatnot. She passes away. What happens? How do I inherit that property? What does that process look like?
Well, fortunately, that's also contemplated in the fideicomiso. So, in the fideicomiso or the bank trust, you can designate a beneficiary. In the case of the main owner passes away, then the beneficiary can inherit that. You still have to do the change of ownership through the notary, but it's a lot simpler than having it owned through a will, because through a will you have to go through the court to designate the ownership and all of that. Through the fideicomiso, it's a lot simpler.
Okay.
So the beneficiary written in the fideicomiso will inherit that property after the main owner passes away.
So therefore, the beneficiary wouldn't have to get a permanent or temporary residency at all whatsoever.
No, because the fideicomiso will maintain itself.
Perfect.
It will continue to work. It only changes the owner of that fideicomiso.
And afterwards, if they want to live in the property, they have to have a residence, either is temporary residence or permanent residence, right?
Live in the property. Would you maybe say permanently,
Yeah.
or maybe once in a while?
Because if you're a foreigner and you want to have a property in Mexico and they want to live here, then they gotta get a temporary residence, right?
Well, the thing is, I mean, it happens a lot here in Playa del Carmen, is that a lot of people live in Mexico on a tourist visa, which
Okay.
happens, but it shouldn't happen. Okay, it's best if the tourist or the owner of the property obtains a residency, because you don't have to worry about leaving the country. If a tourist is living in Mexico on a tourist visa, they have to leave the country within 180 days. Okay, if they do not leave the country, they're subject to a fine. Okay.
Okay.
However, if you want to live in Mexico, it's best you have a lot more advantages if you apply for a residency. You don't have to worry about leaving the country. You can open a bank account. You can purchase a vehicle. You can do anything that any citizen would have. The only difference is that maybe you can't vote.
Okay. Now, let's say I were to inherit that property, I could come and visit as a tourist for 180 days and live in that property. If I want to stay longer, then I have to get legal, correct?
Exactly. Yes.
All right. Now, one last question. For those of our viewers who are wondering, what is the benefit of having dual citizenship versus just maybe one residence and having a temporary? What would be the benefits of actually having dual citizenship for those of those who can, right? It's not for everybody.
Right.
What do you need for this in order for you to get a dual citizenship?
Well, you can get a dual citizenship by two methods. I'm sorry. The first one is naturalization. Naturalization basically means that a foreigner has been living in Mexico as a resident, but will apply for a citizenship. Okay. Then there's the dual nationality through descendants. So in other words, I was born in the U.S., but my parents are Mexican. Okay. So by birthright, you can become a Mexican regardless of being born in the U.S. Okay. Now, what needs to be done in this case is basically inscribing your born birth in Mexico. Okay, that allows you to become a dual national. I mean, you have all the rights that any Mexican citizen would have. Okay,
But it has to be my parents, correct? Not my grandparents, my parents directly, born in Mexico.
right. Well, it's the thing is that the Mexican parent, yes, has to have a Mexican nationality, even if it was also passed down from the grandparent. So let's say that your grandfather was Mexican, but your parents were born in the U.S. So in order for you to obtain a dual nationality, then your grandfather has to pass down the nationality, which is basically a procedure to apply for a dual nationality for your parents. And then once your parents have dual nationality, they can pass it down to you. Okay?
Okay.
And the benefit of having dual nationality versus having a residency is that a dual national or a Mexican national can purchase property directly under their name. They don't need to have a fideicomiso.
Okay.
They don't need to have Mexican corporation to acquire property in Mexico. So you're treated as a Mexican. Regardless of being born in the U.S., you're treated as a Mexico if you can prove that you have that Mexican nationality.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for clearing this up. Guys, I hope you've learned today and you've updated your knowledge on this information. In case you're looking forward to make a purchase down here, please send us a DM, comment if you guys have any more questions. I want to thank Farid for being here. I want to thank Yorman Martinez from MexLaw again. And guys, thank you so much. Any finishing comments you guys want to make?
Also, thank you for MexLaw to letting us be here in the office for the interview. And also, if you want to change your lifestyle, come in lifestyle, and we're going to help you out. Yorman.
Guys, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure answering questions. I mean, if you need any answers for anything else, hit me up and I'll be glad to answer any other question. Now, if you want to find out or have a personal consultation, you can visit our website and I'll be glad to have a consultation directly with you guys.
All right, thank you very much, and y'all have a great day. See you next time.
We're going to talk MexLaw, so any questions that you have, you can DM those guys. Thank you very much. See you guys.